Welcome to News Beast. Today we're talking to our own Aram Roston, who has a kickin' story in the new issue of Newsweek. How El Chapo got U.S. agents to help him become the most powerful drug lord in the world. It's a great piece of reporting. Aram, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So just set the stage for a second for folks. I mean, I think people have some understanding of the violence in Juarez and right below the border and the drug wars in Mexico, but just really hammer it home for folks so we can then get into El Chapo.
It depends on, of course, on where you go in Mexico, but part of it is a war zone. Part of Mexico is almost run by cartels.
Sure.
And we all, you know, tourists will go to the Yucatan and Tulum or Acapulco and so forth, but parts of the country are simply in the hands of various cartels, which have been in a war for the last decade, and it's become of increasing ferocity. And the government of Mexico estimated earlier this year that more than 40,000 people have been killed as part of the drug war alone in cities like Ciudad Juarez, which I mentioned here. A couple of years ago, 3,000 people died. Now the violence is subsiding, but the atrocities, the massacres, the sheer sort of scale of it, and the impunity that's there is what's really shaking people up, and knowing it's so close to us makes it different than it was before.
And what this story is about is really, you sit down with someone who flipped to be an informant for the DEA and ICE. And his experience there was essentially, come on in, but recognizing that there actually is a tacit agreement, or there appears to be a tacit agreement between the U.S. government, or elements of the U.S. government, and El Chapo to put the heat primarily on his opponents, the competing cartels. And that part of that trade-off is, and maybe I'm overstating it, and tell me if I am, part of that trade-off is that it ends up leading to reduced violence in cities like Juarez in the short term. And it's sort of a classic counter strategy, counter-intel strategy. But it raises some real ethical questions.
It does. And the way you put it is one interpretation of what happened. The other interpretation, which is the way I see it, is that in fact...
Let's just assume that's right then.
Well, it's possible. Chapo Guzman, who's become the most powerful drug lord in the world. That's what the Treasury Department called him earlier this year. And the way I see it, and the way a lot of people see it, is he basically played U.S. intelligence. He played U.S. law enforcement by inserting his lieutenants in, so that unwittingly American law enforcement knocked off Chapo's enemies, so to speak, and found it easier to work against them.